What? He said what?
Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
It was a dreadful thing to do and actually completely wrong. He is quite hard and harsh.
He became hypersensitive and blamed the media for the crashes of his relationships.
People like Meghan will always stay with the man if there's no better option.
What if the biggest threat to the British monarchy didn't come from politics, revolution, or war, but from inside the palace itself? For centuries, the crown has survived scandals, abdications, even civil wars. But today, the institution faces a storm of a very different kind. At the center are two people who once seemed like the monarchy's brightest hope: Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Meghan is using everything for publicity and not really truly there. We know how she treats her family.
They were the modern royals, the couple who promised to blend tradition with progress, fairy tale romance with Hollywood charm. Yet now, their names are tangled in controversy, accusations, and whispers that cut at the very heart of royal legitimacy. And here's the chilling part. This isn't about their titles, their Netflix deals, or even their feud with the palace. It's about bloodlines, the very foundation of monarchy itself.
Diana treated her children. It was very important to care about people and not to think about themselves, and that money didn't matter very much. What did matter was to look after people.
Because without unquestionable lineage, the monarchy becomes nothing more than a costume drama. And Harry and Meghan's story, filled with secrecy, contradictions, and rumors, may have placed that centuries-old chain in jeopardy. But how did a couple once hailed as the future of the crown become its most dangerous liability? When Harry and Meghan first appeared together, the world saw a fairy tale unfolding in real time. A royal prince, son of Princess Diana, falling in love with a glamorous American actress. This was a story fit for Hollywood. Their wedding in 2018 was broadcast across the globe, celebrated as a new chapter for the monarchy, one that symbolized inclusivity, progress, and a modern face for an ancient institution. Crowds cheered, headlines gushed, and commentators called them the royal revolutionaries.
She is so odious, it's beyond belief.
Absolute media manipulation. But I thought tonight this was really ridiculous. These are two real imposters.
But behind the curtain, the fairy tale was already fraying. Just months after the wedding, stories of tension with palace staff, feuds with William and Kate, and Meghan's reported struggles with royal life began to surface. Instead of strengthening the monarchy, their union became a dividing line. Supporters saw them as victims of outdated traditions, while critics accused them of exploiting the crown for personal gain. And as time passed, the glamorous couple, who once seemed untouchable, began to look more like outsiders. Their decision to step back from royal duties in 2020 turned their love story into a battleground, one where loyalty, duty, and image collided in full public view. Once they left the palace, Harry and Meghan tried to rewrite the script. They launched multi-million-dollar media deals, signed contracts with Netflix and Spotify, and staged high-profile interviews, presenting themselves as the victims of a system that silenced them.
But if she hasn't had the children herself, or Harry hadn't been involved, then they can't be in the royal line. They have to have royal blood, those little ones. Without that, there's no chance of them becoming a member of the royal family.
But here's where it gets tricky. The couple who famously declared they wanted privacy were suddenly everywhere, producing documentaries, podcasts, and even a tell-all memoir. The contradiction wasn't lost on the public. In a monarchy built on silence, mystery, and carefully managed appearances, Harry and Meghan's approach looked less like tradition and more like a PR circus. Their storylines became carefully curated, emotional revelations, dramatic accusations, and endless reminders of their pain.
Silence everybody and just produce a DNA sample or proof of delivery.
Yet in the rush to control their narrative, something strange happened. Questions started piling up. Why so many staged photo ops? Why so much secrecy around details that had always been transparent with royals before? While their media empire aimed to modernize their image, it also sparked whispers. And those whispers would soon grow into something they couldn't control. Because in chasing the spotlight, they may have accidentally lit it up in places they didn't want anyone looking. And that spotlight turned toward their children. Archie and Lilibet were supposed to symbolize continuity, the next generation of royals, American-born, modern, yet tied to centuries of tradition. But instead of calm celebrations, their arrivals sparked controversy, unlike royal mothers before her.
In this case, about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince Archie.
Meghan broke tradition at every turn. There were no hospital steps photographs, no official bulletins, and no public reassurance about the births. For a family that has always placed transparency at the heart of succession, the silence was deafening. Soon, tabloids and online forums began buzzing with speculation. Was there more to the story than the Sussexes were sharing? Were they hiding details? And if so, why? Some fans defended their privacy, arguing they deserved to handle parenthood on their own terms. But others saw the secrecy as suspicious, planting seeds of doubt that refused to go away. And while speculation had always surrounded royals, this time it cut deeper, because these weren't just whispers about fashion choices or family feuds. These were whispers about legitimacy, the one thing the monarchy cannot afford to have questioned. Then came the spark that turned whispers into wildfire. Angela Levin, a well-known royal commentator with decades of experience observing the family, made claims that forced the topic out of the shadows. She raised questions about the parentage of Harry and Meghan's children, suggesting that things might not be as straightforward as the Sussexes had presented. Now, let's be clear. These were not proven facts, but her words echoed what many had quietly suspected, and Harry's reaction made everything worse. Instead of calmly shutting down speculation, he reportedly unleashed threats of lawsuits, demanding silence. But here's the irony. Legal threats rarely silence rumors. More often, they fertilize them. Each angry outburst was read not as strength, but as fear. And while Meghan stayed quiet, her silence wasn't interpreted as dignity. It looked like avoidance. Suddenly, the couple who branded themselves as truth-tellers had the truth turned against them. And the harder they fought to control the story, the less control they seemed to have. The fallout was brutal. Meghan, once celebrated as a new kind of duchess, became the target of relentless criticism. Every refusal to answer questions was seen as confirmation that she had something to hide. Harry, meanwhile, began to look less like a bold prince standing against the system, and more like a man cornered by his own contradictions. At the same time, the media empire they had worked so hard to build began to collapse. Spotify canceled their deal. Netflix grew colder. The public that once consumed every headline about them started turning away, their fascination replaced with fatigue. And here's the cruel twist. The very couple who once demanded the world's attention now found themselves fading from relevance. Their silence didn't protect them. It backfired, fueling suspicion and eroding credibility. And just when it seemed the scandal might fade into the background, the question of DNA, 3 simple letters, dragged it back to the surface with even more force. DNA, 3 letters that became the symbol of everything Harry and Meghan refused to confront. In the world of monarchy, lineage isn't just symbolic, it's everything. Bloodline is what gives the crown its authority, what allows subjects to accept the idea that one family rules by right of birth. And that's why whispers about DNA carry so much weight. Commentators and critics began asking, if the Sussexes have nothing to hide, why not put the speculation to rest with proof? Why refuse the one thing that could silence every rumor instantly? For Harry and Meghan, the idea of DNA tests or medical records being forced into public view must have felt like a nightmare. Because once the courts or parliament get involved, titles and celebrity no longer protect you. Only receipts do. And if there's one thing this couple has consistently resisted, it's full transparency. The more they dodged, the more suspicion grew. And suddenly, what began as gossip looked like a constitutional fault line, one that could split wide open if ever dragged into the light. Because this scandal isn't just about Harry and Meghan. It's about the monarchy itself. For centuries, the crown has survived because the public trusted the bloodline, an unbroken chain from one generation to the next. But what happens if that trust is broken? What happens if the world begins to believe that heirs to the throne may not even meet the basic requirement of legitimacy? That's not just a family drama, it's an institutional crisis. Every unanswered question about Archie and Lilibet casts a shadow not only on the Sussexes, but on the entire royal family. It feeds into larger doubts about transparency, about honesty, about whether the monarchy can adapt without destroying itself. And here's the haunting possibility. If Parliament were ever forced to investigate, the fallout wouldn't just scar Harry and Meghan. It could destabilize the monarchy itself, dragging centuries of mystique into a courtroom where nothing is sacred and every secret must be revealed. That's the nightmare scenario, and one that feels less far-fetched with every rumor left unanswered. So where does this leave us? With a monarchy walking on eggshells, a couple fighting shadows, and whispers that refuse to die. Harry and Meghan once promised to modernize royalty, but in trying to rewrite the script, they may have opened a chapter that threatens the crown itself. Their silence fuels suspicion. Their lawsuits spark curiosity. And the one test that could silence everything is the very thing they seem desperate to avoid. If a monarchy survives on trust, what happens when that trust is gone? That's the question now hanging over the future of the crown. And if you think this scandal is jaw-dropping, you haven't seen the full picture yet. Because their unraveling didn't begin with Angela Levin's bombshell. It began long before, when the shine of their media empire started to crack. In our next video, we'll reveal how Hollywood deals, collapsing contracts, and failed ventures expose the cracks in the Sussex brand. Click now, because what you'll see there makes this scandal look like just the beginning.